So let me tell you a little bit about the Historics Archive. We've been capturing all this data for quite a few years now, and we've been putting a copy of all that data to one side into our Historic Archive, which is over 2 petabytes of data now. What you can do is use exactly the same filters you would use on the live stream on the Historic Archive. So you can just say, pick this particular filter, pick these times and dates, and apply the filter to the archive over that period of times and dates. And then your job gets queued up and runs. You can see on the right-hand side of my screen there, as time has gone on, we've been adding more data sources and we've been augmenting the data more and more as the years have gone on. So, for example, Twitter, we've got it back to 2011, but then the more recent ones we've added are things like Tumblr and WordPress. So that's what's in our archive. Let's look a little bit about historic tasks. So this is what we're going to do in this workshop, is how to configure a historic task. A historic task can be, as I've mentioned, it's a filter applied over a certain period of time, but you can also choose whether you want to apply it to 100% of the archive or 10% of it. If you're doing a historic task because you want to actually collect every interaction that matches your filter, then you would do it over 100%. If you're just looking at trends, if you're looking at, how often do I get negative sentiment about my competitor's brand in January as opposed to February, then you might just go for a 10% sample of the archive. That might be enough for you. You don't really need every interaction put into your database for that. The query period, you can pick anything from an hour to up to 30 days. If you want more than 30 days, if you want to collect a really large amount of data, you can do it. You just have to set multiple tasks up. So any one task can only be up to 30 days. They complete much faster, so they get queued up, and your task may sit in the queue for a little while until it runs. But once it starts running, it's not running at real time. It's not a day's worth of archive is going to take a day to filter. A day's worth of archive might only take 5 or 10 minutes to filter. So once it gets to the top of the queue, it runs very, very fast. The job itself, the task, is broken up into chunks, and what we'll see is that different chunks get executed at different times. If you stop the job before it's finished, any incompleted chunks get finished off. It doesn't start any new chunks. Okay, so that's the historic archive and what a historic task is. Let's have a little look at billing. I don't know if you already are familiar with how we bill on the platform. There are 2 parts to it. There's a data processing unit cost. So the more complicated your filter is, the more processing our platform has to do, and therefore we charge you more. So when you write a filter, it tells you how many DPUs or data processing units it's going to cost to run that filter. When you're querying the historic archive, there's a bit of an uplift to it. So it's 125% of what the usual DPU cost is if you're querying all of the archive. And if you're only going for a 10% sample, then it's 40% of the DPU cost. Okay, so that's the data processing charge for looking in the archive, and it tells you what that is before you run the task, so there'll be no surprises there. The other part of it that it doesn't mention here is, of course, the data licensing. Every interaction that you receive, you might have to pay for. So, for example, if you're looking at tweets, I think at the moment it's something like 10 cents per 1,000 tweets. So there's also the actual data licensing fee. And of course, you can't estimate that before the job runs. It depends on what your filter is. If your filter is just saying, show me every single tweet over this period of time, then of course it'll be a much larger cost than if you had a very specific filter looking for very specific things. Okay, so that's what the archive is, what a historic task is, how it gets billed. Let's actually go through and set this up now. So the steps that we're going to go through is configure a destination. So before we start running the task, the platform needs to know where am I going to put the interactions that I get out of the archive. So we'll set up Google BigQuery. I'll show you a Google BigQuery destination that I have ready. Configure a filter. So I'll make a very simple filter. The language we write the filters in is CSDL. So I'll write a quick filter, and then we'll create the historic query itself, where we select which data sources we want to use, the times and dates, choose if we want 100% or 10%, and then we start it and we can manage the task from that point on. Okay, so first of all, we need to set up the destination. So I'm going to use Google BigQuery for this. I'm just going to switch to my web browser so I can show you. Hopefully you've had either your customers now and you're using the platform, or maybe you've got a trial account and you've tried a few things out. So this is the dashboard. When you log in to the DataSift platform, this is usually where you start from. I'm going to click on Data Destinations at the top. I'll just wait for your screens to catch up with mine. From Data Destinations, it shows you a grid of a whole bunch of connectors, they get called. So these are all sort of pre-configured templates for how to get the data to the destination of your choice. I'm going to go to My Destinations because I've already configured a few. Again, I'll just wait for your screen to catch up. Now, in My Destination, I've got 2 instances of Google BigQuery already here. What I'll do is I'll just expand the user 1 Google BigQuery instance. Now, I'm not sure if you've used Google BigQuery. It's just a really simple way of being able to create a database that you can query with SQL-like commands. Very simple to set up. You create a data set in a project, and then you can create a table within that data set. So I've already configured an account in Google Developer. I've got my dataset ID is user 1. I've got a project, and you have to configure billing, so you have to give it a credit card number. And the table that we're going to create is called question 1, and then we have various authentication details here, and it needs a P12 key file, so it uses public-private keys to make sure that only the right person connects to it. I'll just do a quick test connection on this one. Just check I've got access to it. While that's doing its test, I'll just go to Google BigQuery here and show you where these different data sets and tables are. So what I've got here, this is the web interface to Google BigQuery, and you see down the left-hand side I've got a bunch of data sets. So here's my user 1 data set, and at the moment it doesn't have any tables in it. Down the bottom here I've got one called user 4, and this already has a table in it called question 1. I've already run a historics job, and I've dumped all the data into this table here, because if we were to do this all live, it might take too long to wait for the historics job to finish. So I can come back to that later. So there's my configuration. Next part is for me to write a simple filter. So again, I'll go back to my web browser, and I'll go to Streams, and I'm going to click Create a New Stream. I'll call it Starbucks to Google BigQuery. I've got a choice of what editor I want to use. I'm going to go for the CSDL code editor. And in here, I'm just going to say interaction.content contains Starbucks. And let's go for language.tag is English, and language.confidence is greater than or equal to 90. So what I'm doing here, the bits that are coming up in blue are called targets, and that's what in our filter conditions, that's what we're filtering against. So interaction.content, interaction is an augmentation that we've got, and it means any interaction from any source. So this is going to look for Starbucks in the content of any message from any of the sources that I have active. So it could be Facebook, it could be Bitly, it could be Twitter, whatever. And obviously the second two are augmentations as well. So this is where our platform determines what language the interactions are written in, and I'm just looking for things where we're at least 90% sure that it's English. So I'll click Save and Close on that one. Now, I've got several choices for how I start my my historic task. This is the stream summary page here, and I could just hit historic query button in the middle, but I'm going to go to tasks and show you how you would set it up if you weren't already in that stream. So here I'm on my task screen, and I'm going to click New Historic Task. From here I can select the filter that I want to use, so I'm going to go for my Starbucks to Google BigQuery filter. And here is where I set the times and dates. So I'm going to go for, where are we at the moment? I'm going to go from the 1st of July to the 2nd of July. Actually, let's go for 2nd of July at midnight to 2nd of July at maybe 6 in the morning. So I'm just taking a 6-hour period there. The data sources, I'd like to have Facebook and I'll have Twitter. So I just check those 2 boxes. This is where I would select my sample size, 100% or 10% sample size. I'm going to go for 10% just to make this one a little bit quicker, and click continue. Then it needs to know where's it going to send all this data to. Well, I've already configured my destination. It was Google BigQuery as user 1, so I'm going to just check the button there for user 1 and click continue at the bottom. You can see I've got a few other destinations that are set up there, and it gives me a summary. So it's showing me, oh actually I've got the dates a bit wrong. I've got July the 1st at midnight to July the 2nd at 6 AM. That's okay. The destination's my Google BigQuery user 1 instance, 10% sample size, and this is going to be 12 DPUs. That's my data processing units. To be able to do historics, you have to have a subscription account. The free trial accounts don't allow you to do historics. When you have a subscription account, you have a certain monthly allowance of DPUs. So you're really just using up a credit of DPUs whenever you're running tasks. So that's that one. I'll click on Start Task. So you can see here it is at the top, Starbucks to GBQ, and this is now queued up. And if I click on this Starbucks to GBQ, there we go. It's showing me here this large progress bar across the top. This is where it'll show me the chunks. So it'll divide the job up into different chunks. Depending how long a period of time the job runs over will determine how many chunks that it creates, and it processes them. So the moment it's queued up, it could start running now. It could take another half an hour before it runs. It really depends on how many other people have jobs running in the queue and what period of time I've chosen to run this historics job over. Once it does start running, it'll run very, very fast, and it'll send the output to the destination very, very fast. Now, because we don't really want to wait for that to finish, I ran one yesterday and put it into Google BigQuery as user 4. So I just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of information that's been sent here. Of course, it doesn't have to be Google BigQuery. This could have gone to your MongoDB, could have gone to MySQL. You know, it could just be JSON files to an FTP server. Really, what we're providing you with are the interactions in JSON. Where you want to put those is up to you. So here you can see we have the schema. Now, by creating that historics task, the DataSift platform actually creates the tables that are needed within the database here. And this is the schema of the tables that it creates. If I click on details, so this is one I ran yesterday, and we've got about 61,000 interactions in this database, about 80 meg. And if I scroll along this little preview here, you can see all the different fields. Now, obviously, not all the fields apply to every interaction, but here's some that do apply to them all. So we have things like interaction author links and the content of the message. So this is just a preview to show you the information that's been dumped here. What I can also do is I could query it. So, for example, these are SQL-like commands. I could say select interaction.content from this table and limit the output to 100. If I run that query, here we go. So here's the first 100 interactions that have been dumped into the database from our historics job, and it's only retrieving this one single field for me here. So I could use a more complicated filter to get more information. I've got one that I made yesterday. I'll just copy and paste in, make it a bit quicker. So here's one that's a bit more complicated. Let me go through it for you. So I'm selecting 1, 2, 3, 4 different fields from the database where the interaction source contains Instagram, and I'm ordering it by the interaction source, and I'm going to limit that to 1,000. So here I'm looking for everybody who's talking about Starbucks in English, but only where it's an Instagram post. So let me run that query. So it could have been a tweet, and in fact, if you look at interaction type, all of these in this example are tweets, but this is a tweet that where the source is the Instagram application. So it's probably on someone's phone where they've Instagrammed themselves in Starbucks drinking a coffee and tweeted about it. So here you can see those 4 fields. I've got the author names here, I've got the Instagram links. I could go and look at one of these. Let me just open one of these in another tab here. There we go. And as seems very common with this, whenever I do these demos, people are strangely keen on taking photos of their drinks and posting them on Twitter and Facebook. So it's just somebody who's taking an Instagram of their coffee. So that's an example of running the historics job, dumping the information into a database, and you can query that however you want. Of course, this information could go straight into an application. If you use the API rather than the web application, in the API you can configure historics job too. So if you're writing a program to do a particular thing, you can set these jobs up and the information can be streamed straight back to your program. Just another quick one to show you on the visualization of this. I have Tableau Desktop installed here. So Tableau Desktop can connect directly to Google BigQuery, and it can sort of have live access to that data. So I'm just allowing Tableau to connect to Google BigQuery. So it's found the project, it's found the data set. Let's find the table. It's called question 1. Select that one. What this is doing is connecting live to that Google BigQuery database, and it's looking at particular fields to be able to visualize that data. In this case, it should hopefully draw me a map. Here we go. So sometimes when people are sending social media updates, so for example it could be a tweet, they have geographic information included as well. So if you, for example, have the Twitter app running on your phone, there'll be an option in there for whether or not you allow geo-tagging of interactions. So all this has done is it's found people's tweets and the longitude and latitude of where the person was when they sent that tweet. So this is actually a view of where people were when they were making their Starbucks updates. And if I hover over one of these little dots, it's showing me here what their message was. So we've got an I love Starbucks on this one. We've got someone in Moscow by the looks of it. Lots of hashtags on there. One, someone in Sweden up here. That's not a very nice one. Someone in Scotland. Okay, so this just an example of being able to connect live to that database and visualize that data for you. So I've gone back to the task page for my historics job. You can see now that it's been broken into chunks. Some of those chunks have been executed. The task status is now running and it's 24% done. So if I were to wait here for another sort of 15 or 20 minutes, I'm sure the whole thing would be finished and it would all be dumped into Google BigQuery. So let me go to Google BigQuery and just have a look at the user1 data set. So I'll just do a refresh on this page. And what you can see here is, if I wait for your screens to update, before there was nothing under user 1, now we have a table called question 1, and this is where, as each of the chunks are executed, it's dumping all of that data into the database. So what we did was simply configure a destination, configure a filter, or use any of the filters that we've already been using for live tasks, and then configure the historics job by selecting the destination and the filter, selecting a time and date, choosing which data sources you want in it, whether you want 100% or 10%. It shows you the DPU cost of running that historics task, and then it runs. As simple as that.